Linares, and I have been living in Pennsylvania for 21 years, being less old than I think. I represent the Pennsylvania community affected by the society proposal. House Bill 857, which misconstrues the 14th Amendment, alienating undocumented immigrants as not warranted by the Commonwealth. House Bill 856, which is in the sign to transport undocumented individuals who work for the church.
Ms. Linares,
Example.
we appreciate you being here today. And I know sometimes when you take a microphone for the first time, it makes you a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And sometimes I read a little too fast, and I read a little too fast when I'm giving testimony, and I don't know done in the past. So we're not going to bite. Take your time. You can slow down and just relax and read your testimony to us, and then we'll do the Q&A if you'd like to entertain questions at the end of your testimony. Take your time and don't feel rushed. I think you'll have plenty of time to delegate.
Most awful law is House Bill 738, which simulates the Arizona bill criminalizing those who do not have or do not carry alien registration numbers everywhere they go, those who seek employment to provide for themselves and their families, and those who give employment to hard workers. It is difficult for me to know that my home state, Pennsylvania, is considering all these proposals that would harm and even criminalize Pennsylvania communities. The immigrants who I know are people who only want to provide for their families, to give their children a better and brighter future. Reasons not any different than those of immigrants who came to the United States before. As in the past, immigrants are facing hostility. They are not being welcomed, instead being persecuted and prosecuted. Laws are unjustly being made to criminalize them. The end has been demonstrated by supporting these anti-immigrant bills, which astonishes me. It is heartbreaking to hear that my home state is taking such cruel steps following those that have already been taken by Arizona. My parents started to rise in Pennsylvania in 1989, carrying me in their arms as I was only 8 months old. At the time, my brothers were 7, 15, and 17 years old. We settled in North Philadelphia, where my grandfather had his own business. He added his own efforts to local economy. When my grandfather needed help with his business, my parents stepped up and helped him by managing and working his business. They worked very hard and would not have a lot of time to dedicate to my brothers and I because they were too busy working and trying to provide for them. My 2 eldest brothers grew up in North Philly and attended Edison High School, a newly constructed building at the time, where they did academically well despite the new language they had to learn rapidly and did. They joined the soccer team. My eldest brother was such an exceptional soccer player that he was being recruited by LaSalle University on a soccer scholarship. However, for some reason, he was unable to attend. As a little girl, 3 years old, I did not understand what was happening. My 2 oldest brothers were not able to continue their education. My brother George and I were given no explanation. We lived in North Philadelphia for about 5 years until we moved more up to the northeast, although still continued to be North Philly. Throughout the years, my parents worked in anything they had to in order to provide for my siblings. My brother, they worked in hotels, schools, houses, to working at pizza shops, bakeries, factories, and lumberyards, all while paying their state, local, and federal taxes. I grew up seeing how hard they worked, the sacrifices they made. I would not get to see my parents every day. I would see my mom in the morning before school. When she cooked for the day, so we would have something to eat, and she would get back from work after they went to sleep. I would not see my dad except for maybe on the weekends. My family never wanted to apply for any sort of government assistance, not local, state, or federal. We are not even eligible for it. I saw how hard they worked, their strength and determination in providing for us. I learned from them to be a good, honest, and hardworking person. I learned in school year after school year that hard work in America always pays off. So I dedicated myself to school. I was always one of the best students in class, if not the best. I learned so much from my teachers. My first grade teacher, Mr. Goldberg, taught me how to read and was the first person to show me ability on the map. My second grade teacher, Mr. Royal, who instilled in me the golden rule to treat others the way you want to be treated. My fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Robinson. My third grade teacher, Mrs. Buchanan, who taught me the importance of having dreams. My fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Robinson, who taught me the important role immigrants from all over the world played in the formation of America. I learned what the other kids learned. I worked hard and I thought we were all equal. However, when I was in 5th grade and my older brother George was graduating from George Washington Carver High School of Engineering and Science, a magnet school in Philly, I learned that our family was considered to be different. George had attended Magnet Middle School, Magnet High School, and excelling in his classes, obtaining excellent grades. He grew up thinking he was like all the other kids because my parents never told us about our immigration problem, trying to protect us like any parent would. He grew up loving the fire. He collected Marvel comic books with his friends. He did not see any difference between himself and his best friend from elementary school, William, or his best friend from high school, Kevin. He knows the English language well, way more than Spanish. He knows American history and culture. He is in every way American. Yet that year, we found out that he was considered less American than his peers. He lacked a 9-digit number. He was undocumented. As a child, I saw his devastation, anger, and depression. He was a rising star, and this immigration issue, something he did not choose for himself, has held him back. His best friend William is now a pharmacist and businessman. Kevin has made a career in the U.S. Air Force. They are both as heartbroken as I to have seen my brother's potential not shared with the country due to the broken and unjust immigration system we live in. How contradicting is it to hear over and over again this country being composed of immigrants. To hear over and over again that hard work pays off, that only in this country can someone start from the bottom and rise on top with hard work. I realized as a little girl, yes, that this leading principle was only true for some. I was confused and hurt. I was only 10 years old when I found out I was undocumented. I too, like my brother George, did not understand why I was perceived as being different. I had been here since I was 8 months old, literally brought here. I learned to crawl and walk here. I did not understand why this had to happen to my family. We are good, hard-working people. I recall going to school and just being down. I went to my best friend Julie. I asked her, "How did your parents get papers?" She said, "Papers?" I said, "Yeah, you know, like a number. You used to work." And I'm not really sure, just papers. I was in 5th grade. I had no idea what I was talking about. Only that it affected my brother and that it would soon affect me. I was told not to tell anyone in case anyone would want to hurt him. That is when I began to have a huge fear. I was scared. I did not want to stand out. I did not want anyone to know I was different. I made my best friend swear she would not tell anyone. She did not. From this point forward, knowing that I was undocumented and therefore different, I could have done one of two things. Become as the president said, my brother, fearing that my hard work would never pay off as it should, or continue to work hard knowing that I could eventually hit a wall. These were difficult issues we faced at only 10 years of age. Thinking of my parents and their determination to always work hard despite adversity, I followed their example. I continued on to my middle school where I received straight A's, formed part of the National Junior Honor Society, National Academic League, and graduated class valedictorian. I went on to Central High School, Magnet School in Philly, where I also excelled academically while being a member of the National Honor Society, Bowling League, and Yearbook Editor Board, among others. I graduated in the top 5% of my class with a 4.1 GPA, receiving a Bachelor's of Arts degree, the only high school in the nation able to do so. In high school, I was fortunate enough to have a counselor who cared about her students. She's a great person who helped me understand that I could attend college. I applied to several colleges in Pennsylvania, public and private. After much calculation, I decided to attend Temple University. Words cannot describe the excited stage I was in. I felt so great. I felt like finally my hard work was starting to pay off. That my parents and brothers' sacrifices did not go to waste. That I could be someone for them. To honor them and their admirable trait of never giving up and working hard. Throughout my last year of high school, I asked my mom about talking to a lawyer. It was then I found out everything my parents had done in an attempt to legalize their status. When we arrived in 1989, my parents, not knowing the laws of this land, decided to consult with an immigration lawyer in Center City, Philadelphia. They did the right thing by going to a lawyer. They applied to adjust their status. I filed for work sponsorship. Having all the papers in order, they waited for the process. They would call in from time to time to check on the status, and every time they were reassured it was on the right track. However, years passed and a concrete answer was still not given. By the time we moved to Upper North Philly, my parents had finally had their back in the way. Information was missing, and too much time had passed that they would have to reapply again. My parents tried again. 2 more times thereafter, paying the lawyer each time. The third time they applied, I became involved, going to the lawyer's office every week with my mom, checking on the status of paperwork. However, this third time in front of me, he actually blamed us for not following up enough. And therefore, after 18 years, we finally received our response. We were denied due to negligence. I could not believe he had the audacity to blame us and say we were not keeping up with the case. It was not so polished when I asked a friend who was a lawyer if she could look into my parents' case. It was only then that my family and I found out our petitions from years ago were never processed completely. There was no record of our first petition, which means the lawyer never sent it to the government, while the last was being abandoned, thereby causing it to be denied. My parents' lawyer, like many out there, exploited my entire family, taking advantage of my parents' naivety to land unknown to them, causing our family to miss out on several opportunities. I continued my studies despite this devastating news. I graduated in May of this year with a double major in Information Science, Technology, and Spanish, with 2 minors in Latin American Studies and Political Science. I was fortunate enough to found the love of my life at an early stage in my life, Linares, who I married earlier this year. After graduation, I moved down to Maryland, where I now live with my husband. I am now a legal resident. However, my parents are not. My brother is not. My friends from Dream Active, Pennsylvania, Helena St. Nolfit, and Pennsylvania Liberty Dreamers are not. They continue to work hard knowing they will eventually hit a wall.
Linares, if you could go past the 10-minute time for the upfront testimony, if you wouldn't mind entertaining some questions, and kind of concluding, if you could maybe just give us a verbal wrap